Hello lovelies, this is Jenny Solaria, delfini with a video about reptiles mantis, in us, and how they control us astrally. And of course there are many more entities that belong to them, and I just came up with the idea. Came to make this video because I'm really very frequently and regularly. I get emails asking if I recommend the healer and if you can go there. 2001. Some even write to me that they don't have a good feeling, but they want each other. Let me make sure again whether Mr. Healer is really one of the good kind. And I just thought to myself, I've already given a lot of interviews and videos about it, but it can just be done. Not be clear enough, otherwise yes, the questions do not come. And that's why I thought I'd talk a bit about the new cage and then go over to castings and how they just work with us, that you just to get a bit of basic knowledge. That is very important to me because you can understand my work much better. So also from my perspective, why I am taking such a straight path. And yes, simply for your decisions too. There at this very moment in your life, the direction you take is very important. And that's where I'll start. So the entire new cage, like me, I called it that back then. So the name came about because it basically represents a new prison, although the healer scene really wants something good and doesn't even realize how deep in it was, and I was completely in it. And it's like this, the whole of New Sea Age the term includes working with spiritual beings such as Jesus, God, gods of all kinds, including the Hindus, Yusand, and her whole entourage, also with all the angels and some astral doctors. So everything that is astrally invoked there also goes very deep here. Into the shamanic realm also with working with the deceased is all done under New Sea Age. And as you can imagine, and this has simply arisen from my experiences through my astral clairvoyance, and also due to the possibility that my astral body can move through the astral plane since childhood. And I know that some people do, you can, but you lack the awareness to do so. There are many where there are solo efforts and they come back completely exhausted and cannot establish a connection. This has to do with physical consent and also with sacrifices in the past life, yes. Simply because they were separated from each other. 2001. Based on my experience, are these beings so intelligent about us? You're like, now I have to go and read my notes here. They are never what we think they are. So now you think of Jesus and embody a certain image. You think of the angel and think how beautiful, you get another picture from the internet and so on, if you only knew what they really look like. They are incredibly creepy creatures. And here again, very briefly. At that time I was a medium and for original frequencies and had to work with certain entities, simply also for the students. I had a franchise company at the time, a New Cage franchise company, and was instructed by another medium to do certain things. And every time they came to my practice, these beings, that is, when the initiations from Jesus took place every 6 weeks, the room went cold. And that was actually more of a graveyard atmosphere, but through music, what you do in the background, candles, the mood is mentally set in a positive way. But it's not. You really let yourself be lulled to sleep. A normal child would run out screaming and say how scary it is what you're doing. And these creatures don't look like you think they do. They are reptiloids. I have seen Usen and Dracos and also Mantis. Yes, I'll list a few others later on where I found out later that are also behind it. But these are the classic ones, especially the ones that already have a name here on Earth. Please note that the names of the Dracos are very short, usually 3 letters, 2 syllables, 4 letters. So God definitely runs down there, and Jesus could already go in the direction of the reptile. That's already too many letters for the Draco, because they are really quite simple animal consciousness. They can pronounce complicated names. So they have such a simple vibration and they control the astral plane completely, i.e. from the fourth density, and therefore also our astral. And they basically know more about us than we do ourselves, because people here are raised in a matrix of 2021 consciousness and never learn to connect or communicate with their astral body, but only connect and grow up with the matrix and the mental plane and the ego. And that is their advantage. That is how it is done. Hence the school, where you are locked in your head. And sitting is also a big problem. So here the body goes into an S shape where the snake can fit in wonderfully, and you can't defend yourself. You even have to sit still. This fidgeting still helped the children to prevent themselves from being driven into for a long time. You have to imagine how many students sit for years, and then later you send at their office desks, sitting through a whole lifetime, doctors and so on, until again and again the snake fits in perfectly. So we are really in the simplest. So it will take your breath away if I tell you that just speaking is an advantage for them, because that's when our mouth opens and then they can astral in with the air. Every word and every number we write is highly, highly satanic. We were consciously taught that. Well, we don't need to talk about shaking hands anymore because it has decreased significantly anyway due to corona measures. It was also fortunate because it meant you could swing from one body to another in a few seconds, just like when you exchange data with the USB stick and everything is packed onto it. And if you then join these beings, i.e. worship them, and these beings must also comply with the cosmic laws in the fourth. So that means you really have to give your consent, you ask them for it, then they can help you. And that they always help through black magic, Ishiji, with lower possessions, which they attach to you like devilish souls who have to serve them and who are then given a special. That works too. They can actually do healing. They can also attach ancestors or other spirits to you. And yes, they are always present somewhere in your astral body, and then, after you have given them your consent, they are responsible for you. So you won't get rid of them that quickly. And there is also a hierarchy within this astral plane and these beings. And since they have the highest votes through prayers from the earth, so these archons, as I call them, if you take them all in the group, also have much more energy than other lower astral beings. For example, much more energy than a human being, because what kind of person is so adored by another? So it's incredible what God and what's behind Jesus, behind Mary and all the New Cage angels, Metatron. Yes, I've already replaced them all so well that I can't even think of them anymore. But then there is what's his name? No matter. In any case, the very classical ones, yes, and the more they are worshipped and the more of their images are set up, worked with and called upon, Michael, now he comes to mind, who is supposed to pick up the deceased or create light. Of course, can they do that? And they can simply catapult a deceased person into the astral underworld. But that does not mean you send. The deceased is feeling better. On the contrary, it will then remain in the hands of this reptile or this spirit. You have, so to speak, given him the task of looking after the soul. And above all, it's very sad when someone does something like that, because you're really damaging the soul of the deceased, because you don't trust them to find their own way without a doctor. Sometimes there's a reason why they still linger in our homes, simply because they haven't been replaced yet, because someone in the family has held on to them. And of course, there is also the fact that the new cage scene created the Christ grid relatively quickly, 10 years ago, where it is simply particularly difficult for the deceased to leave the magnetic grid of the earth and ascend to a higher dimension, but they get tangled up in the fourth density. So this has been done by their own people, by their own blind new catchers who don't know what they're doing. So the new cage scene has done the most damage to the astral plane that you can imagine. What you did there will go down in history. So do we all, and all those who blindly started to use pendulums or tarot. Incredible amounts of orders have flowed in, and energy has also been poured in. Yes, and the most important thing is that consent has been given, and it's essential to take it down again, even if you've worked with extraterrestrials. I count them as part of this being. Yes, so I could say the Arcturians or the Reiki energy, and I don't want to say it, you send. So a bunch of beings who say they are in a higher dimension and they can help you. So here I really have to say once again quite clearly, if a being, let's take the one from the 21st century, if they think that they have to help a lower dimension, then they have not yet understood that we have to develop ourselves, that they do not trust us, that we also have a guide, and that at some point they were also at this stage of development, and that we really have to go this way alone without help from outside. And above all, the fact that we are more likely to listen to them, that they interfere in the physical mind level, so to speak, means that we would rather give them our mission than follow our soul again. And our soul is a passive female energy that is far in the background and knows exactly what it is doing. So then they haven't yet understood that we believe in a much higher consciousness than just the 21st century. Dimensions are connected. Yes, we are connected in the multiverse, and that's what all these dimensions in Beings 2001 are trying to do, to be prevented in these dimensions. And that's why, for me, they are in ashtonic leadership and have at least exactly the same brainwashing that we have been through if we still believe that we can help others. We can only tell others how the path goes in parallel, but they must neither worship us nor demand our help in the sense that we spend our energy on them. It's different when I make recommendations, but they sometimes get really involved and do aura clearings from the astral plane and things like that. That's not possible. So again, briefly, that through the votes, so through prayers, invocations in groups above all also, or then also in new CH seminars, it is incredible on earth, all the people who are sitting in temples and praying, which is madness. There really are so many beings who have more energy than we humans here on Earth, because they can't produce energy themselves and exploit us astrally. So, in the astral plane, in the lower one, there is no connection to higher dimensions. We are trapped there and dependent on energy from the Earth. That's why they have to work with us. So it's not a selfless reaction to offer you their help. It's very selfish because they know that otherwise they won't be able to stay there for long and will end up in a deeper level of the astral plane. Yes, and since we are trapped here in this matrix and in normal everyday life and consciousness, deconsciousness, we usually don't get any insight into the subtle worlds. The matrix hardly gives us any time for it. We are only distracted either with tasks, children's birthdays, forms, household chores, work and so on, news. After all, it is an insane sonication, and therefore they can be conjured up. And that's what they became, all the religious studies and New Age, all the shamanism, which for me is exactly the same as Satanism, here only very briefly. That's what the reptos taught people. The snake from the inner earth. So the snake beings live in the earth because they can't stand the light and because they can't stand the oxygen. either. And they taught the people, and the Indians in particular, especially the Hopis, satanic, i.e. shamanic work. And that's how it all came. And they work for these beings in New Age and in shamanism. And with them, they simply always register under a different name. So you never know that it's actually the same being. They dance helplessly on our noses. So they really think we're stupid. It's like this. And you may not know the story of how I found out back then. I don't want it again now either. Tell, because I've told it so often. In my seminars, I simply took a closer look at Jesus at some point and realized that the more I became his medium, the more I was actually dancing past my life. And I was offered to drink from a chalice, and then my family and I would be taken care of. So he said he really needed someone to work for him here on earth, and that I should write a book. And then I can stay at home with my babies. And it became so beautiful, so sweetly smeared around the nose that I almost drank from this cup and thought, yes, that's the solution. I don't want to talk my children down because it wouldn't have worked before. I can't give a high frequency seminar and people channel their origin stories, and then I come home and step in fallen off diapers and do the Smurf party and cocoa on the carpet and stuff ripped off. That's easy. I have 4 children, and they were small one after the other. I didn't know which diaper to change first, and the pacifiers were lying around. So all I know is that it was a mess, and it doesn't work. That is not compatible with life. And yes, and then he said the Jesus to the story. Then he said to me, yes, if you don't drink it. And then I asked him twice. I asked him again, are you really from unconditional love, from unity? And he said twice, yes, of course, Jenny, that's me. And the third time I asked him 3 times, this one. I knew I had done my white magic seminar at some point, though very, very soft, just scrying and tarot. And I knew about the number 3. And the third time he just burst from me, this Jesus, 2021. And then I was really sad because I was a bit ashamed because I thought, now you've insulted him because you don't believe in him and he'll never come back. And your offer to earn thousands of euros with a book where I simply bring his knowledge down to earth. I was really, really sad. I didn't realize that at first. And he also said to me that he has a soul contract with me. Of course, at this point, I also had the franchise company. I actually had a contract with a medium who I then served, did work for her, and she worked with him. And through that, I also had a soul contract. Yes, anyway, I went to my husband and he reassured me and said, don't be sad. If he really has a soul contract with you, as he said, then he'll come back. Yes, and that's how it was. A few days later, 2001, then it came back and now things got interesting. He looked a little different, so the hair color was different. He has a different robe on, and he told me almost the same thing. History, as if it had been downloaded from a record. Only this time he offered me a pomegranate and cut it and said, I don't need from the cup, but from this very pomegranate. And then I think, that's funny. Has he now gone back to I put my heart and soul into it? I had a really strange feeling. I felt like I was being taken for a bit of a ride. And then I asked him, say, Mal, you Jesus, I'll find it now. It's great that you're back for now. I would like to ask you again because I think the offer is really great. And that also did something to my ego that I, Jenny, yes, can work with Jesus. So it was simple. It was several things. And yes, and then I got it. Just tell me why you're coming today. In a different guise, don't you know what you look like or what? I mean, that's a bit strange somehow. I either look like this or like this. And then says, oh no, don't you know that? We here in the astral plane, we can be a different one every day. I then said, okay, so are there any other beings who could also be Jesus? Or how many of you are there? Then he says, oh, so many, so many. anyone here can be Jesus. I can also be Maria if that makes you more comfortable. And yes, they also have to tell the truth when you ask them questions. Yes, but which medium does that? Yes, and of course I freaked out. I was done because I have really brought people into his initiation with full conviction. And then I realized, my goodness, this thing doesn't take the piss. It can be anything. And yes, it's really great magic and with a lot of love. I hope I got that across, that when he spoke, or I did, tell me sooner if it has spoken. Then there is a lot that is really mental. Love flowed so much so that I almost believed it was real love. But the fact is that if it communicated with me, almost paralyzed by this high frequency in quotation marks, no, that was a magical narcotization. Because if I say that too, if there are other media listening to me here who are paralyzed by it or can barely move and think that's the pure love, yes, some people have. This also told in India when they were with certain deities or so, that you then almost lost access to your body. But don't confuse the two. This is high-grade magic. This is also done in occult alliances today. You can really paralyze people and then compulsory to do certain things. Yes, that's black magic, hence the thread. Back to the reptus and shamanism. And the most important thing is when you call them, and e.g. also go to a healer and give them a mission, then these entities will receive a soul contract from. So you are giving away the power of your own guidance, your own wisdom, and your own healing to someone else. The healer then sends his possessions to you, and you also have a soul contract with his beings. So it's set up like a Ponzi scheme, yes. And then you have a soul contract with them, and your soul with its own plan loses access from that point on. So like you go to another new sea age who believes in these deities and works with them, 2001. And that is only possible if you agree to it. That is the consent, and you don't realize that. Physically, it doesn't cause any pain when you do it. But in the next 5 years, your life will be in classic blatant sleep mode. And you will see that it becomes quiet, that you have no further development. You have so much homework down here that a lifetime is almost far too short. So we can't really afford that. That's why many people are so hectic and overexcited, and because they know they are under pressure to do their homework. Well, I'll have to see what else is important now. Even if you are in this incarnation, yes, this last incarnation, which for most people here is the end of a cycle of soul experiences. Many indigenous peoples have been talking about this since 2000. So since the year 2000, free souls no longer have to incarnate. So there is such a thing as a high school diploma here. So you do your homework here for the last million years and then you no longer have to incarnate. But if you haven't finished your homework, you'll have to go back for the next cycle. And that always lasts 1 photon year. And the crass thing is, if you leave this incarnation here with an agreement and a soul contract with these archons, then you can now imagine the following. From the next incarnation, you will serve these beings and can no longer remember real love because the guidance of the soul is occupied. And that's where the name Besetzung comes from. You gave someone else the job, but when you're 18, you don't even know that anymore because you're dealing with this matrix again and you've forgotten where you came from. That's what we have on Earth. So here to friends, acquaintances, everything you've seen here, even enough people who are so far away from love because they made different choices in their past life, went to a magician or whatever they did. They didn't stay in their soul guidance. And that's not a reproach. It's really not an easy thing with so many offers. Yes, and the other option, which you can take if you want to go home, because the people who go to the new case scene feel that they want to go home. They want to find a way, and that's why I don't actually think it's that bad what great information there is about the new cage. But it is unfortunately coupled with half-truths and the high price you pay. And there is the other variant, and that is to find your soul path and to strengthen the connection to yourself and your soul, and to free yourself from the Ashons and their entourage while you are still alive, so that when we pass through the astral plane after death, we can no longer be intercepted by the Ashons. This means that we no longer have an astral claim to our guidance. You can't just do it when you're dead. Many people think that when I die, everything will be fine. No, that's when the horror begins. If you already thought this life was horror, then you know what awaits you in the astral plane. This path, this soul path to finding yourself and really focusing on your guidance, takes longer than just a weekend seminar with a Newcastle Shiler who teaches you clairvoyance. That's not a real clairvoyance contribution either. You get a cast, and this cast then tells you what you see. Natural clairvoyance is totally different. It really comes from your own soul guidance, because your soul has decided that it is important for you to be clairvoyant for your task here on earth. You can't just become clairvoyant in one weekend. This is either innate, given to you, or you find the access points on your own. Okay, so your own soul's journey takes time and there is hardly any help, physically speaking, but if you empower yourself and also ask for help, your own soul guidance and your own seizures in higher dimensions, but they are really only yours. They don't have a name, they don't speak to you, they are simply, I always call them the nameless and the silent ones, because they don't speak. And then you get more and more guidance. That's why I rewrote the Lord's Prayer for this reason, because I believe that the original Our Father, which exists today, was originally a kind of message for us. This has been rewritten because if we start with, when we speak directly to our soul, incredible, monstrous things happen. You can no longer put it into words or physically explain what your soul can do. When you give consent to work with you, to take care of you, to protect your children, to cleanse your partner of obsessions. So it's all possible. Imagine that. I don't need shamanism and a contract with a reptile 2001 for that. Yes, but it's also a bit tougher. It's much easier to go to someone else and say you can't do it anymore, stroke me a bit, massage my neck pain away, than to work on it yourself. Yes, and we were brought up that way. Look, there's a doctor, that's where you go when you're ill. It was done that way on purpose. It only serves the snake a little, but otherwise it can help you, of course, to distance yourself even further from your soul. There is a reason why people are ill and they should look for it. No doctor does that. And if you also follow this path of the soul, with self-empowerment and working with yourself, then life as you know it is not possible. You have to change so much and alter so much that it is really noticeable and that you will be attacked from the outside. Not only are you being attacked from the astral plane, you are being attacked by your own family members, friends, acquaintances, neighbors, co-workers, and just the store clerk where you are, because the beings are angry that they can't rule over you. And only when you can really say in your life, why is everything always so difficult for me? Why is what I have always built up always destroyed? Why am I not encouraged? Why am I not supported on the outside? Then it is precisely for these reasons. In other words, a sign that you are more than another in your soul guidance. That doesn't mean you can't be occupied, but if she's still very strong, you've got a gauntlet here. and what me and my family have been attacked since I swore off the new cage. I can tell you, when I worked for the new cage, I had a picture book life. Really, Rosamunde Pilcher. It was fantastic. It went like clockwork. I didn't have to do any advertising. People were dragged into my practice. Don't ask me today where they all came from. I didn't know them. They were really guided astrally. And they didn't want anything other than what I offered at the time. And from the day I had the conversation with this Jesus, and then I said, I had a freak out, which to this day I think my voice is just a tone softer since then, because I screamed so murderously, because I was so ashamed and I was so angry. I cried and wrote and said, I hate you. Why did you do this to me? I have become so detached from them. It took me another 3 to 5 years before I found them all. I was so deep in it. And the more I detached myself from them, the more horrendous my life became. The sabotage programs are unbelievable. It starts with simple seminar room searches, which I no longer got. I have cellar caves where alcohol was stored. I was allowed to give seminars there, but exactly on the weekend, 2001, where there would have been a beautiful seminar room upstairs flooded with light. Yes, unfortunately, there is a Reiki seminar. I really noticed that it was unbelievable how this was sabotaged. And when I've got a nice seminar room because I've worked spontaneously and without plans and without a calendar, then the reptos can see everything when I'm somewhere, which is why they want us to write down what we're doing. Then they spontaneously booked a Tantra seminar in the next room. There were always things that made me think that it wouldn't fit. Yes, and we want to make it soul nutrition. Or I once had to do soul nutrition in a monastery where the nuns and people outside were running around with crosses, really big crosses, because there was simply no apparent seminar room in the place. So if I did, they made my life really, really difficult. This is just one example. Good. So you should know that. So if you decide to take the soul path, it's going to be really tough. But let me tell you, it also has its advantages because you really don't need a TV anymore, no front row on ARD and ZDF, because your life is the crime thriller par excellence. And it's also fun if you have a real zest for life and a healthy awareness and you're a bit adventurous and need that tingle, then I recommend this path to you because it just makes you stronger every time you win. And it weakens the beings in the background so that today many people only have to mention my name. And then the critters are already running in the astral plane because word gets around when you're immune to the critters. I just have to say it again now. It's actually the case that participants have signed up for light nourishment, I don't know how many thousands back then, and all the new cage goers, among others, because they were also led to me, so to speak, to be tested to see if they really didn't want their self-empowerment back. And there was one woman, among others, who lived with a completely normal man, a businessman, and who had been doing all kinds of seminars for many years, including shamanic huts and everything that goes with them. And he always paid her because she had no income. Yes, and then it wasn't a problem at all. She just got the money and invested it everywhere. Has just registered with me too. And this man, I'll say that again now, has neither dealt with this name in the new sea age scene, nor does he know what is on offer on the market, but simply let his wife do it. He has had far too much to do with numbers himself. In any case, it's Friday and she's packed her bag. So the weekend seminars were always Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and she wants to drive off and is in the hallway with her bag. And then you approach her. Yes, darling, where are you going? Where are you this weekend? Then she says, yes, I'm just there. I'm with Jenny. I'm doing a 3-day seminar. She already didn't want to tell him that it was soul nutrition. And suddenly there is complete silence. And he says no. And the energy in the hallway is really blatant. And then he looks at her and says, Miss, all these years I've financed everything you go to, and you can really go anywhere. I have no problem with you having fun there and downloading your spirits, so to speak. That's what I said now. But I'll tell you one thing now, miss, you're not going to Jenny. And then she says, do you know Jenny? No, but you're not going to the Jenny. Do you understand what I mean? That if there is someone led by the reptos, that immediately has the information about what kind of consciousness is behind it. And of course, all the men knew, have been running amok all these years, possessing, manipulating, dominating, and also eating up their women astrally, because they themselves are occupied by the reptos, with lots and lots of magic in the background. They freak out when their wives go to me. Yes, and not without reason, because they know that the women come back empowered, strengthened, and independent. And that is the right of every soul. I wonder why it should be the other way around. That has nothing to do with love. Yes, but you also have to teach them that. Men were also purified, and they no longer worked with this being, replaced her, spoke their intentions, prayers. And the exorcism reports I've received are unbelievable. Now that really is awesome. I can't believe what I've found out myself, because there are enough keys to get rid of it. I have also included this in my seminars and in my work. So once again, it's a lot of hard work, and the whole family will be against you if you want to go down this path. Because all of them, 90% of the people out there, are astrally guided by these spirits until they empower themselves. And that's why it's important to take a close look at the people you connect with. There is always something else behind it. If you are wondering why they are all here and where they come from, that's not possible. Everyone has conjured up spirits. No, not everyone has to summon a ghost either. Didn't you know that? Imagine how many people around the world offer gods every day. I'll just go in the direction of Islam, India, Asia. Yes, I don't want to go in the direction of the Roman Empire and the Church in South America either. I don't have the breath to continue. And above all, they usually do it 3 times a day, yes, praying to the east, but really hard. I was once in Egypt and experienced the energy there when the Muslims all renounce their souls with the chime of the gong and send their energy eastwards. So it was like, I don't know, like being crucified. That's what it felt like. And this naturally has an astral effect on the morphogenetic field and on the 4th density of the earth. And so all people are summoned to these gods because that is what the measures do. You can assume that the dimensions offer beings. Even the indigenous peoples, the Australian Aborigines, all shamanically worship spirits. Yes, that is the minimum. Very few do not. And all those who don't deal with it can then simply be astrally visited by them. That's just the way it is, because you haven't given any other consent. Unless you say no, they also have to accept our free will. And if the desire for life and coming home is so strong, then you will also have enough strength and motivation to walk this somewhat harder path, the path of the soul, and to empower yourself. It's like giving birth or raising a small child. First, you have horrendous pain, and then the world looks completely different. You will then be rewarded. And just to bring this in, since I no longer offer soul nourishment seminars as I used to, I still have this one path, and it's been a year. And that is horse training for soul nutrition. And it's a gentle path where you have enough time, but even in the first few weeks you see your enemies out there or people who are just not aware. And you very slowly and gently learn something that you need for self-empowerment, and at the same time go your own way. Because I always get these accusations from these, let's say, controlling spouses and families. Yes, this Jenny way. Yes, you don't have to go the Jenny way. And yes, there are other ways, so clearly, yes, please tell me other ways. Let's name some other healers out there who have really self-empowered and clearly worked things out to allow a person who is deep in the matrix to get themselves out. They do it themselves. These are self-healing techniques that I offer. I don't know a single one. That would be nice, by the way, and I would like to make an appeal if you could name some colleagues who really do that, who really walk the path of the soul and who also walk it themselves and don't preach in Mercedes and drive BMWs, but who can really give support to others freely from their own experiences. Yes, no. Most healers out there have done a few seminars somewhere and now think they know everything. Is the problem. Some of them are very young people who have no life experience at all, who have not been attacked by the matrix. You don't need to talk to them. They say it's all good, everything is fine. With love, we can really get you home. Forget it. Forget it. A strong demarcation is necessary, and a strong no, and a very strong I love me and not a strong I am. No, we are not, so I am not. But then we are a unity of love and gratitude. But the I is the ego, and that doesn't exist. The dark forces work with the ego. Yes, and that can take a really, really long time, and this 1 year is just the start. And you simply learn everything you need for self-empowerment there, very slowly. Including you go your own way, and through yourself, through what you do, you receive many, many solutions, insights, and wisdom. And you won't get that from me. Everyone who receives my offers of help, and also perspectives and observation possibilities from me and experiences, application possibilities, can and must also go their own way. None of those who were with me in training went my way. My path is completely different again. You don't want to know. When I write my memoirs, you will know that it's cheeky to claim that anyone is going my way, and there is no such thing as the way. Yes, each of you who are out there, I have to work my way up individually from my own hell. And I have the key for that. I know that because I have accompanied so many thousands of people out there. But not everyone has made it because they've fallen into the matrix trap again, and then, oh no, and then my partner leaves me. I don't want to, I can't. Well, then it just doesn't work. If you can't let go and he is your guardian, then you can't get out of it. But there are also enough partners who have gone along. The end results are beautiful and fantastic. And you also learn how to solve occupations on your own later on. So it's not like you're dependent on me forever. Basically, it's usually about 2 years. Fixed study time, where you always have the feeling of being so secure, aha, have I done it right now? And then you go your own way. That is quite normal. Okay, now you might have a slightly better insight. And again, I think it's important for me that soul nutrition is the only way to refuel your astral body. This means filling it up with you and making contact with higher parts of your being. That is real practical experience, but the entities that have already occupied you will do everything they can to stop you. You will really get to know them, they will stand beside you and therefore not give up so quickly. They just put their anchors and implants all over your life for safety. And yet you get out of it. You just can't give up. Yes. And after this remote training, nothing is as it was. Nothing more. I really want to be honest about that. You are then no longer in this world, and yet you are of this world. Yes, okay. And yet every soul has to find its own way and make a decision. If the strength and trust in your own soul guidance is not strong enough, then there is once again the way via the new sea age. I accept that, and I have no problem with it. So no one should be afraid of receiving a different spiritual guidance in the next incarnation. then he probably needs it first. He must first have sunk deep enough to say that this is the end. And maybe it really was just such a low point in my life. And for others, this class simply comes later. So it's nobody. Yes, and so please don't be surprised that I keep getting, yes, can you recommend a healer? And what do you think? Because you are no longer in Germany, can you go to another healer? No, I can't recommend a healer because most of the healers I have trained came to me already contaminated. And so I saw what was sitting on it. Most healers are so badly occupied that they have to be treated themselves. Yes, and of course, even if the healers have really worked from their soul at the beginning, they are so strongly affected by the astral plane that after a few years they are no longer pure soul. And that is so difficult. And in my opinion, and this is just my experience with soul nutrition, yes, because then you are more present in your astral plane. Yes, and I hope you still have a bit of attention. I still have a little bit left. Yes, so these possessions work in the same way, and it is enough to have had an invocation or to have been with a healer who gives the angel channeling. Implants are placed and then secured several times. I have them in my wrists during my practical work. Feet, neck, solar plexus, posterior heart chakra, you could find them everywhere. And you can't just remove one implant, you have to remove them all at once. And this work against magic is manipulated energy, that's the abbreviation for it, is almost impossible because, as I said, they are so strong in the astral plane. And with you sent on every corner, you'll catch a bunch of demons in your astral body again in the next supermarket. So much so that you don't even know where you parked when you come out. And these are all signs that the astral body is totally full. And whenever you are not completely clear with yourself, then they are clearly within you. And solving that is far too exhausting in the long run. So every single detail, every single occupation, really speaking intentions, prayers around the clock, that's what a lot of people do until they really have so much strength again that they can occupy the space themselves. As I said, this is only possible through nourishment of the soul. Yes, and the controls, well, the whole thing could be labeled as an astral invasion. So we are all astrally invaded and are in a permanent war from birth. I also have used an ultrasound images where the ultrasound machines were not yet so finely adjusted, where you could see these demons sitting on them. Yes, these are really horrible things. So you could also switch on the fourth density. In the ER years, they were not yet so fine. So I really do have photos and facts. So the control of the human body and its spirit happens from the fourth density and always via our ego. Yes, our ego is always addressed by them. Don't you want to treat yourself to that too? And look, you can have that. Why shouldn't you have it? Now treat yourself. Yes, you can also think about yourself. These are the things where they trigger you. And these are mantis, reptiles, felinoids, wolves, dinoids, cats, all kinds of alien races you can imagine. There are an incredible number of them, including sub-races and the Dracos. And below that there are also higher ranking masters and so on. And what supports their sabotage of our bodies and minds? And that is now very, very exciting. This is Wolan, electrosmog, electricity in general. We have also brought this to Earth because we are purely magnetic beings. Microwaves, now the masks that everyone has to wear nicely. This is perfect. The more anaerobic the organism becomes, they do not tolerate oxygen. And the less oxygen in your body, the better they can talk to you. That's why they now want to remove the trees everywhere. In 2001, the magnetic field is actually our internet. We communicate with our soul via the magnetic field. Our heart is. It is a magnetic field, yes. It is simply closed by injuries that have been consciously inflicted on us. People who are occupied can be brought to you and break your heart. Consciously, purposefully, I just want to touch on the subject of, dual souls. Yes, that's another one of those things. So no soul splits. Duality and division only come from the serpent, and this awareness alone is from the snake. Yes, twins too. I really have to say that there are strong snake lineups there, only then is it possible. Multiple births only occur in the animal kingdom. I don't need to say any more, do I? Yes, and these occupations, i.e. the sabotage of these beings in our astral body, go so far that they don't want to kill us, but just keep the body alive so that they feel more comfortable in. And you see it, especially in older people, how they change their nature, how they walk. Just take a look at what's crawling around on the streets out there, what they look like, the faces. If there are wrinkles and unbelievable things on their faces, then you can see that their eyes are empty, hollowed out, barely visible, very small or deep black. So you can really see that. You just have to open your eyes to see what kind of cattle are out there. 2,000 of those who are no longer dying. And that is incredible. We have actually had experience here that if you increase the energy in these people, these beings leave them, and in the short term you see the soul again. Yes, and what the soul is waiting for energy to die. Loss of these astral planes, the beings from the astral plane, take so much energy from people that they can no longer die. That's why we have such a great healthcare system. Yusen, which is also important, how can you tell that you are set? So no human being can really be permanently without these astral beings. You hear them in your thoughts, you hear them when they speak to you. You just have to learn not to listen. And you are also constantly transferring, whether you are talking to someone or giving someone attention. After conversations, especially eating together, you realize, for example, that you suddenly have a loss of energy, dizziness, or negative mood or arguments, bad mood, anger, and thoughts that keep repeating themselves. And you continue the conversation to the end, even though the person has already left. And even when you talk to these beings, you sometimes realize that. The interlocutor begins to drag, repeating what he has said. That's immediately a sign where all the alarm levels are red, where you have to get up and leave immediately and say, you already told me that 5 minutes ago. So you can see that you're just being sucked off. You will be kept down, exactly. Or when someone says something and can't get to the point for ages or takes 5 minutes to give you an answer. Guys, something is wrong. Open your eyes, stop looking away and see the reality out there. What I also have to say, in parallel to the prayers that are made worldwide, is that there are also very structured occult covenants. Because these dark beings really need trained Satanists who therefore work highly magically behind the governments and also in the governments in order to obtain the energy to be able to continue using us via then occupied government members and so on. Yes, they demand regular sacrifices such as 9/11 or the tsunami in India. And they also need conflict, suffering, pain, hatred, anger, greed, so that we are always visible to them. We must always actually be dissatisfied, then we are in such a low frequency that it is very easy for us to settle in again. They are real astral parasites. And only when we are happy, and especially on soul nutrition, and we walk past the next portal, can they not see us. 2001, so only if you open up or just let them get into your ego can they pull you back in. So the defense is really just about. I also have to say that I spent many, many years more in trance than in the real world and felt much more at home there, much more comfortable and protected, because I simply spent many hours with clients either doing regression therapy in trance or giving deep relaxation sessions, meditation evenings. My practice was really full all week. Everyone who still knows me knows that. And of course, the rest of the week was individual sessions where we also did a lot of meditation. If you want to get an insight into this, then order my CDs, volume 3, 4, 5. You see, that's the right thing to do. Volume 2 also has short meditations. Yes, and volume 1 too, of course. So volume 1 is the classic area that is actually good for everyone when you get into your soul space. And remember, at least volume 1 is meant for activation, for remembering back. Yes, and I did that for so many hours, nobody can imagine. Yes, and then through the soul nutrition, you stay in the 5th dimension of your multidimensionality anyway, and have a much easier connection to the 7th dimension than to reality. Yes, and the astral body has to be kept clean. And that's when I also brought spiritual emotional help onto the market, which is still successfully offered and implemented by healers, doctors, and alternative practitioners today. And we even have evidence in the dark field microscope that it actually works, and you can see it physically in the evidence. Yes, and only then does the awakening of consciousness and the reorganization take place. And if a switchover and cleansing has simply taken place astrally, then you can imagine that this is also the case for you on the physical level. 2001 and 99% of your life has changed because the astral order has resulted in a new order on the physical plane. This can lead to separations of all kinds, professional, private, and with friends. And that's a good thing, because one thing you have to learn anyway before you leave this earth is to let go. You can just imagine that they don't like that. They're not, if you're happy, they're not immediately gone. The astral beings do the following. They can, just as you are happy, let them, you can adjust the clock, come up with something after 10 minutes to then inflict a bad pain on you again and shock you. Maybe someone drives into your car, or you get a lever, you send your mother has died. So it's really nice to be dragged down. They always come up with something. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to me right now who are saying that's exactly why I'm afraid to be happy, because I'm always punished afterwards. And that's why you make yourself even happier, because you no longer accept the punishment. You explain that from now on it's such an illusion what they do to you. You have to be a bit tough. Yes, and only long work and experience in your own body is also necessary with the astral plane in order to recognize later and also to be able to react when you have attacks again. And the best method is to start speaking intentions prayers. And through the intentions prayers, you get your access to higher dimensions. And yes, spiritual emotional help, so go, means that this works immediately. And you can also have it under control, because the new occupations then tend to come less, because you no longer call and so on. So no more prayers. So let's see what else is important now. I think we're almost at the end. Yes, which you should also know, every single client, 2001, women's education, which is really based on love, is really blatantly monitored. That's why they regularly cause arguments, even if it's just the sock, because that's a repto opera. So the reptos are happy, music to their ears, and so they can slip back into your body astrally. So it's fantastic. They always find a way. And at the end of their argument, the partners usually don't even know why they were arguing. That's the icing on the cake, or they whisper something in your ear that the other person didn't say. So they can make themselves hear or think things that the other person has never said, and men are easier to handle than women. That's why they are supposed to oppress women, even with their physical strength, and women are being masculinized. And what you should perhaps also know is that if the man then drives a Ferrari, or really lets his brother hang out, playing soccer with his proles, playing computer games, then his own wife is sucked dry by the raptors at the same time. And then when men make really ridiculous or embarrassing comments about their own wives, typical of women, they block their wives to such an extent that it really has a lasting effect, including on their own feminine side. And if you think we have no protection, yes, we have very, very good protection. We just have to use it. And how can you tell that you are still protected? So you can tell by the fact that you're still healthy, I would say. That when you wake up in the morning and you're in a good mood and you could hug the whole world because you're just grateful, you feel 2001 fit. You start the day full of energy and are as curious about life as a child, open to new things. Your connection with your soul and unity is so strong that you certainly haven't heard anything about what I've just told you. But if that's not the case and you get up in the morning and my goodness, I'd rather stay in bed and definitely not at work, you send. Or you're not happy with your partner because he simply can't love you. How can an occupied person love you? How is that supposed to work? My goodness, they are even poorer than you. In principle, you should always show understanding, but a limit must also be set here. A lot of people do that. They are in this helper syndrome. No, we have to stop doing that too. There are also 2,000 of them, so I can only buy the evil wand here. Start with interdimensional water. This water teaches your cells how to communicate with your subtle bodies. And if you're having a really stressful day, feeling completely down and out of energy, take an Iwas bath and the world will look completely different again. But there really have to be pearls around your body, and then you can have 2001. Start to find the long path, the soul path, to search for yourself and also make your own realizations and really go it alone. I'm not there. You can't call me at any time. What do you think? Yes, you have to go it alone. And that's what your soul wants too, because it wants you to come back voluntarily. And I also have to accept these laws, so I'm not allowed to interfere either. Even if I see or know things about you, I will never tell you. I don't want any more punishment. I used to do that. Then the brake pads were unscrewed from my motorhome. At 80 km on the highway, I almost lost my life with my family just because I interfered with others. Yes. Yes. It's just awful how often my life was to be taken from me in this life. But since I've accepted that I no longer go into the clients too much, 2001, and really only deal with them superficially and tell them what they have to do, I'm really left in peace. I can only say that. Yes, by the way, the devil doesn't like Ives water, just very briefly. So these reptos don't like Ives water at all. They reject it. They hate just looking at the stick or that you have it in the household. Then they can block it astrally. You have all accesses. There's no point in being with a partner who doesn't walk the same path as you. You have to separate yourself and decide for yourself. Otherwise, you decide in favor of the reptos again, and you can set an example for him. You can do that. And maybe he'll come after him because he's also changed his mind and decided to follow love after all. But stop suppressing it yourself. When you see that someone else just brings home another 5 and 3 raw eggs, even though you say you're going on soul nutrition now, so that's just worth saying goodbye to. There is no such thing as running over souls. That no longer has anything to do with love. Nothing. No love is compassion. No compassion. And that is also a striking sign for the reptus. Okay, I think if I don't stop now, I'll still be talking tomorrow. So maybe just the final sentence. All the no-goes that I also impart to my participants during Soul Nourishment 2001, including sex, drugs, wakandru, you can imagine a package underneath, makes these beings slip back again and again completely into your astral body, which is why the path, the soul path, must in principle bring about a new change in your life every day. You really have to initiate change, otherwise you won't move forward because they will pull you back faster than you can look. And through these things, as I have just listed, soul parts also fly out and then the demons slip in. it's always the case that if your container isn't full of you, then something